Hello, welcome back. Lara and I are here again for what is now the third video in our series of videos that is not named body parts. Still waiting for a better name.
I'm on it.
Okay. We're here to chat all things hips and knees today. We've already discussed shoulders, we've discussed ankles, but there's some bits in the middle that I guess we could probably drill into in a little bit more detail.
Knees and toes, knees and toes, sorry.
Lara's wants to sing songs. Lara, what is going on with your hips and your knees? What's in play there? What are those structures? What are those bits? What is there? What are we worrying about?
It's a big question, let's be honest. I suppose the biggest thing to know about, we don't need to know the nitty gritty about your hips and your knees. Like, the biggest thing to know about is that we have a lot of demand on our hips and our knees. We've got our day-to-day impact, sitting down, standing up, walking around, climbing the stairs. And then you've got here added in the gym, you've got your squatting, your lunging, anything really that requires you being on your feet is going to put some sort of strain, stress through your hips and your knees. They're built to take it, don't get me wrong, they're there to do it, like that's
their job.
That's their job, right? But there are things that we need to consider when using our hips and our knees.
I guess one of the interesting things about your hips and your knees is they're loaded for large parts of the day. If you're stood up, they're taking load, right? Mm-hmm. And as you said, they're designed to do it, but I guess that's a big difference between, I don't know, your shoulder and your hips and knees.
Yeah,
like your shoulder, my right shoulder's right now unloaded, but as soon as I stand up, my hips and knees are doing stuff again.
I thought you were going to say as soon as you stand up, your shoulders are loaded.
My name is not Tim. I do not handstand walk everywhere by choice. I guess your knee is quite a complex structure. There's probably quite a lot going on in there that maybe we don't need to worry about in loads of detail.
Your knee is one of your simplest joints, actually, to be fair, Sam. You got one movement, forwards, backwards, really. Like, your hip is probably a bit more complicated in the fact that you've got almost every single movement under the sun can go along in your hip, a bit like your shoulder. Ball and socket. Your hip is also ball and socket, so it allows all of that movement, but it's a lot more stable than your shoulder because it's a big old socket and a big old ball.
Sat right inside.
Sat right inside.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is it as simple as glutes and quads?
No, I don't think it is as simple as, no, I know it's not as simple as glutes and quads, in fact. You've got lots and lots of muscles, ligaments, tendons, everything around your hips and your knees, holding them and the joint itself in place, keeping them strong, keeping them moving effectively. And that's the sort of thing we want to focus on and look on in this video, really. I'd say.
In terms of, in that case, we've got lots of bits and pieces. It's not just my bum muscles and my leg muscles. There's a little bit more going on. In terms of keeping that joint healthy and happy, if I know that it's loaded most of the day whenever I'm on my feet, if I know that I'm using it a lot in the gym, what are my key things I need to be doing to make sure that joint is healthy and happy?
So I suppose to know what we need to do to keep it healthy and happy, we need to know what's causing it to be, I'm reluctant to use the word unhealthy because it's not unhealthy, but unhappy, let's say. Unhappy. So things that could cause unhappiness in our joints are things like your suboptimal movement, so coming out of that direction of movement, so for example your knee, twisting it in a weird way, or for your hip going past a movement that you're not capable of doing. A weakness, decreased range, as we've said about before, sort of all links to your suboptimal movement. So what are we looking at solutions-wise to fix these sort of things then?
Well, I guess
the next question.
Yeah, and I guess in classes, chasing the optimal movement, that is our bread and butter, right? That's literally what my job is at this point, is chasing that super efficient, super optimal, super beautiful movement so that we've got those joints doing the things they're supposed to do, working the ways they're supposed to be working to keep things super happy and healthy
100%.
All the time we're in here. And then, if this CrossFit thing works, super happy and healthy outside the gym as well, right? So I guess point number one is all those bits that we're doing as coaches, things like push your knees out wider, maybe bring them in a bit, move your toes out, maybe bring them in a bit, getting someone else to change their squat stance, all those little adjustments we're
Lift
making.
your chest up, all of those prompts you hear in classes.
All those bits that we're throwing out all the time, chasing that better movement is step number one in driving that healthier, happier joint, or joints in this case, because you've got better quality of movement.
For sure.
Right, okay, fine, that's step one. So if my joints feel good, being here and chasing that better movement with us is probably a pretty good place to be.
Yeah.
Okay,
100%.
good, excellent. I did a good thing already.
selling it. I suppose next then is looking at being able to reach those ranges of motion, reach that nice squat shape we're looking for, reaching that nice lunge position we like to see. So I think the other thing we also do in classes, and we do it really well here, I'd say, just blowing our own trumpet, is looking at sitting down in the bottom of that squat. That's the one movement that's really going to open up all those positions for your hips and your knees. Like beginning of any workout where we're intending to squat as a group, we sit down in the bottom of that goblet squat, don't we? We advise you to pop that dumbbell over or the kettlebell over your knees, rock forwards and backwards on your hips, your knees and your ankles. It's another thing that we do day to day in classes, just to
own those positions, be strong on that end range of motion, be mobile in the bottom of that squat, and that's doing so much for those hips, knees and ankles that actually that's a big tick box in terms of being mobile in those bottom positions and having that healthy range.
100%.
Okay, so we've got that healthy range, we've got that mobility. What are some of we've already spoken about causes of pain, I guess, haven't we? It's that weakness, it's movement patterns are a bit funny, it's poorer range of motion, and we've started to address that by sitting in the bottom of a squat. I guess if we've got that weakness, what are some of the things you might be looking at?
Strengthening, shock, we all love it. So I suppose we are going to go through a little program here that is something that everybody here should be able to do. We can adjust it to whatever level is acceptable for you, appropriate for you. So we're just going to go through a few different exercises now that I think, much like we discussed in the shoulder video, is something that everybody can do to improve that quality of movement and to improve the strength. If you feel like that
squat pattern or that hinging pattern is weaker than it could be, here are some nice ways. Maybe you can chuck in 5 minutes of pre-class prehab to make those movement patterns a little bit stronger, a little bit healthier.
For sure.
Okay, what are we talking? What are we looking at?
Okay, cool. So we're going to just get this out. Oh, do I need to? What do I do with this? We are going to talk single leg work. I think we focus a lot here in CrossFit of staying on 2 feet, which is really great because it's a great movement, it's powerful, you can do loads of things on 2 feet, but it just means we neglect our one-footed movements, which is just significantly better efficient for building strength. So first things first, let's look at our lunge. So we take our squat stance, we've discussed this many times in class, we take 1 foot behind us, chest stays up, we go down and we stand back up. Good. This, exercise number 1. What we really want to focus on here is quality of movement. So if you notice Sam's knee is going straight forwards and backwards, come up for me. What we don't want to see is a wobbly knee, going all over the place. So if you start doing this, you're going to slow it down. You're potentially not going to go all the way to the floor. You're going to go down to a position in that movement where you don't wobble. So even if it's literally here and you come back up, we're going to work on that control. Same for the other leg. Good. While you're doing this, you're going to feel your quad working, your bum working. Beautiful control there from Sam. It's almost like he's an athlete. If we want to make this harder, we could add some load. So we could take that into a goblet position, exact same things, quality of movement. What we're not doing is adding weight onto that movement if we don't have that quality. I would rather you have beautiful movement, unloaded, than not beautiful movement, loaded, right? The other thing we can look at is getting our back foot onto a plate, onto a raised surface. The higher this surface is, the harder this is going to be. So we did loads of these during lockdown too. Saturday squats were joyous. Fabulous. So the exact same thing again, we've got that beautiful controlled movement. We're not wobbling side to side. If we find we're a bit wobbly, take your feet out wider. And if you're still wobbly, maybe a raised foot isn't the option for you at this point. Cracking. Cool. So we have discussed our lunge. The next one we can look at is your glute bridge. So we all love a glute bridge. We don't, but we do. We're going to lie flat on our back, feet flat on the floor. We're going to picture that hollow position, you know, that one we talk about every day in gymnastics, in hanging, in whatever. We're going to push our belly button into the ground. From here, we squeeze our bum, lift it up into the sky as high as we can, and lower it back down. Same here is quality of movement. So if you find that one side of your hip is coming up more than the other, might be difficult to see. Sam's really exaggerating that, so that's beautiful. We want to focus, head back down, on your hips staying level. So what you can do is find those bony points at the front of your hips. Squeeze your bum up. If you can feel one hand moving more than the other, try and correct it. Try and keep those hips nice and level. If you find you can't push all the way up before your hips becoming wobbly, don't go all the way up. We go through that movement that is good for you. To make this trickier, we can take this onto one leg. So Sam's going to start with a bent knee because it's easier. Yep. And he's going to do the same thing. So already we've got a little bit of hip shifting there. Better, corrected, well done. Switch to the other leg as well, obviously, in this situation. Nice. If we want to make this trickier, we can straighten our leg. Just makes that lever a little bit longer. We're going to have that leg just a touch lower. Good, lovely, beautiful. Progression from that, so we can add a little bit of weight on the front of our hips as well. Same thing as before, if the quality of movement isn't there, if it feels too difficult, if it feels like you're wobbling all over the place, let's not add weight to it. Fabulous. It does look a bit silly, but it works. And last but not least, really good for that single leg control. Sam's going to bring that box in a little bit closer. We're going to work on some single leg step ups. So same as we've done before, we pop foot on the box, our leg that's on the floor is behind us. Using our back leg as little as possible, we're going to stand up onto that box. Good, lovely. Then we're going to come back down under control. Same thing here as with those lunges. We want control in that knee. So if it's wobbling about all over the place, Sam's going to come straight on. If it's wobbling about all over the place, we're going to either go for a lower box, or we're just going to do the up. So lower box makes this easier. Making it harder, lowering down, is a bit more tricky. To make this harder still, we can once again add load. Alternatively, we can make the movement slower. So we could go up for a count of 3. 1, or 2, 3. Hello. Down for a count of 3. Go on. 1, 2, 3. So this, beautiful example of that wobbly knee situation. Probably a bit too tricky for Sam at the moment, but something we can work on for sure. It's a good indicator, right? Why not? I think if we stick with those 3 exercises, we're just going to work on getting everything around those hips and knees. Your glutes, your quads, your adductors, your hamstrings, everything there is going to get stronger, more control. The more control we have, the better strength we have, the more optimal movement we have, the more beautifully we move, and out in the real world, the healthier we will be for longer.
I have no mic, you'll have to sign off.
Team. That's it. I don't know how to sign off from these videos.
Toodles, enjoy, John.
It's been a delight. Toodles.